Der Burgherr des Teufelsschlosses, der Herr des Bösen, Graf Dracula ist auferstanden.
Hello everybody, and welcome back for another blood-curdling edition of Shoreviewken. Today we're taking a look at a game that is much coveted by PC Engine collectors, and a game that many think is one of the better entries in the Castlevania series. It's Akumajo Dracula X Chi no Rondo, or simply Dracula X Rondo of Blood. This game was originally released on the PC Engine in Japan only, way back in 1993, but was later re-released on the PSP and more recently the PS4. It features a plot that is basically the same as all of the Castlevania games that came before it. I'm sure you know what it is. 100 years have passed and Dracula has once again returned from the grave to terrorize the world of man, and it's up to this generation's Belmont, Richter in this case, to vanquish him with the legendary vampire killer whip. The key difference this time around is that we get a bunch of really cool, fully voiced anime-style cutscenes to move the plot along, which wasn't possible on the cartridge-based systems at the time. The art style doesn't exactly scream Castlevania to me. I think it became much improved in later games, but these cutscenes do still have a certain charm to them. In terms of gameplay, again, this isn't really all that different from the previous Castlevania games, though it doesn't feature the 8-directional whipping of Super Castlevania 4, but instead goes back to the classic controls of the first few games, most likely because the standard PC Engine controller has the exact same button layout as an NES controller. Despite that fact, Dracula X does control considerably more smoothly than its NES counterparts, much better even than the Dracula X on the SNES for that matter, and there are a couple of additional moves thrown in for good measure, like the backflip, which looks pretty cool and can be very useful for dodging certain attacks, and the item crash ability, which lets you do a super attack with your sub-weapons at the cost of a bunch of hearts, and these things can be real lifesavers. I also like the fact that all of the hearts you've collected carry over from one stage to the next, and there are no time limits, making things at least a little easier on you. Another great aspect of Dracula X, very similar to Castlevania 3, is the various branching paths in the game that allow you to explore different levels and rescue the various maidens that have been kidnapped by Dracula, and depending on the path you take, it can greatly alter the ending of the game. On top of that, if you're able to find the room with Maria Renard in it, she becomes available as a playable character, and she's a lot of fun to play as. She has a double jump ability and some really powerful magic attacks. It's actually quite a bit easier to play through the game as Maria, but make no mistake, this is still a very challenging game. Some of the levels can be very tough, and some of the boss battles, particularly the endurance fight in Stage 6, can be absolutely brutal. Still, this is an extremely fun game with great controls and level designs, pretty much as good of a Castlevania game as you can possibly get while using the classic control scheme. Aside from the gameplay, the graphics and sound design in Dracula X are both fantastic. All of these stages are really colorful and detailed, and there's a huge variety of enemies, a lot of which were reused in Symphony of the Night. And again, the cutscenes are a very nice touch, even if the art style is really cartoonish and simple compared to later games in the series. This is undeniably one of the best looking games in the entire PC Engine library, and of course, the soundtrack is going to be outstanding. It features a bunch of new songs to the series, as well as some classics like Vampire Killer and Bloody Tears, and all of their reimagined CD quality goodness. This is definitely one of the better soundtracks in the entire series. It brings bloody tears to my eyes. So with amazing graphics and sound and spot-on gameplay, this is definitely one of my personal favorite Castlevania games of all time. So this is an amazing game, and I highly recommend it to Castlevania fans and to fans of action platformers in general. The original PC Engine CD version is still pretty damn expensive these days, going for as much as $200 online, but that's really more of a collector's piece. There are much cheaper reproductions available, and you can also play this game as part of the Dracula X Chronicles on the PSP, or as part of the Castlevania Requiem Collection on the PS4. However you choose to play it, I'd be willing to bet you'll love Dracula X Rondo of Blood just as much as Dracula loves Rising from the Grave. It's an absolute gem of a Castlevania game.